My name is Professor Michael Brown. I'm interim chair of the geography department for this year, and I'd like to welcome you to Geographers in Practice. It's great to see so many current students, but also alumni, faculty, and friends of the department. We're very glad that you've joined us. I'll start by recognizing that the University of Washington sits on the lands and waters of the Duwamish, the Muckleshoot, the Suquamish, and the Tulalip nations. And for us as geographers, this means making a commitment to actions that support those and other Indigenous peoples through our teaching, our research, and our service. Our colleague Heather Tarr, a UW staff member and a geography alum, will introduce tonight's event. But before I turn it over to Heather, some thank yous. So thank you to Emily Umatsu, Lindsay Kale, and especially Nell Gross. They staff in the geography department presently, and they've all worked really, really hard to help make this event possible. And a special thanks to Nell, who leads the career exploration for geographers, which is a fall quarter class that I think has a lot of close connections with what we're doing here tonight. And of course, thank you to our panelists. And with that, Heather, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Professor Brown. I am so honored to be here with everybody. And now thank you for facilitating this with all of these awesome students and of course panelists. But I, of course, am a geography major like many of you. And just in case you didn't know, you can be a collegiate softball coach and win a national championship as a geography major. So without further ado, I am going to introduce the awesome panelists. We have James Alexander. He's a program manager with the U.S. Department of State. James works as a senior client associate at Standish Management, a venture capital fund administration firm. In this role, he's able to use his Excel skills and working with others to support solutions that integrate services to provide an efficient and investor-friendly experience. Before attending UW, he spent more than 8 years in the U.S. Army. After his honorable service, he took advantage of the GI Bill and attended UW as an undergrad from 2018 to 2020. In 2020, he was honored with the Outstanding Senior Award by the faculty and staff of the Department of Geography. Never one to rest, he used his pandemic lockdown period to enroll at the iSchool in the Master of Science in Information Management program, while also enrolling in the Geographic Information Systems certificate program offered by UW Tacoma. At the iSchool, he was honored to receive the 2021 Faculty Award for Student Excellence. His collegiate work focused on geographic genealogies and activity-based intelligence. Recently, he has accepted an offer to work for the State Department. In his time away from the office, he enjoys time with family, cooking, and traveling. Okay, next, we have Ashley Fent, campaigns researcher, Heal Food Alliance. Ashley Fent is an ACLS Leading Edge Fellow at Heal Food Alliance, a national multiracial coalition of over 40 organizations that works to transform our food and farming systems. At Heal, she conducts research to inform and raise public awareness about ongoing campaigns and policy advocacy. Previously, she taught courses on environmental justice issues at Vassar College and worked as a researcher at Community Alliance for Global Justice, a small nonprofit in Seattle. She holds a PhD in geography from UCLA, an MA in anthropology and African studies from Columbia University, and a BA in geography from the University of Washington. Her work and research has taken her to numerous countries in West Africa, including Senegal, Mali, the Gambia, Guinea-Bissau. She has also been involved in producing short documentaries on climate finance, mangrove afforestation, and agroecology. That's a tough one, agroecology. Ashley lives in Tacoma, Washington, on the occupied land of Coast Salish peoples. When not working or chasing after her 2 young children, she enjoys dancing, painting, and growing food. And last but not least, Hamdi Mohammed, Senior Project Manager, General Mills. Hamdi Mohammed is a Senior Project Manager at General Mills, supporting North America Food Service Sales organization. She is currently based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but since this was written, she has since moved back to the Pacific Northwest. Hamdi has 12 years of project management experience, both in software development, customer relations support, and managed IT investment portfolio growth across an organization. After graduating from the University of Washington in 2008 with bachelor's degree in geography, Hamdi began her career at the Boeing Company as a business analyst, supporting the beginning stages of development of integrated systems for the sales and marketing organization. She then transitioned to the mobility space, working on the development of mobile apps for the Paris and Farnborough air shows. Hamdi moved into a project management role where she managed the renovation and technology upgrades of the Customer Experience Center and supported a suite of tools for the network and fleet planning team. Hamdi also pursued and graduated with a master's degree in business administration at the University of Phoenix. She then had an opportunity to be a part of the commercial aviation services team to perform deployment training to international airline customers on how to utilize aircraft maintenance manuals and performance systems. Being part of that team, Hamdi greatly appreciated her valuable experience of having a geography degree. It helped her build connections with airline customers and regulatory agencies to coordinate communications and deployment plans with the customer support team. On a personal note, Hamdi is married and has a daughter who is 8. She enjoys traveling with her family and loves cooking as well.
Great. Thank you, Heather. And welcome to all our panelists. For the next half hour or so, I'll have a few big questions that I'll invite each of our panelists to discuss. Please know that there'll be time for Q&A from the audience, and we'll be turning to that around kind of 6:40 or so. You've already learned a little bit about our discussant's professional and public activities, so I'm going to dive right into some questions to get them to tell you about how they got from where you all are to where they all are. So I'll start by asking our panelists to tell us about your journeys as geographers in practice. What professional or community activities are important to you today? And what inspirations led you in these directions during your time at UW and then afterwards? And let's start with Ashley.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you all for being here. So I'm actually going to start the other way, which is that when I started at University of Washington, I actually transferred in from Evergreen after 1 year. And one of the first classes I took was a course that was called Geographies of Global Inequality, and it was taught by Vicki Lawson, for those who are familiar. And it blew my mind. It was such a powerful course, just kind of diving into why the world looked the way that it did. And it gave me the frameworks that helped me make sense of inequality and injustice, right? And also gave inspiration for how it could be different and how it could look different. And that is really kind of the thing that has driven me through grad school, through research, through my current and former positions in nonprofits, is really this just driving commitment that we can do better. We can have systems that are more environmentally just. We can have societies that hold people up instead of, crushing them and pushing them down. I really, truly believe that. And so that kind of framework has carried me through, all of my careers so far. And from geography, I think one of the things I really take away is just the interconnections that we really have to understand in order to tackle the biggest problems that we face right now. We have to understand how countries are connected to each other, how policies are connected to each other, how different scales are, from the local to the global to the national, are all kind of working with each other in order to be able to address all of these things. So I would say those are some of the kind of biggest commitments I have that I take from geography.
Great, thank you. Let's see, James, would you like to go next?
Hi all, James here. Before I say anything, I just want to say that everything I'm saying is purely my opinion and is not representative of either my employer or the federal government. Just to throw that out there. I fell into geography. It was actually a little bit of a punishment. So I was in the Army at the time, and I had deployed, and we were going. I was sent to Ranger School. I managed to pass by like the skin of my teeth, but my body was broken. And one of the things that I got to do is they said, you're not going to go on the next deployment. We're going to get you some schooling so you can kind of, build yourself back up. And I said, okay. And they said, the only school that nobody wants to go to is this thing called ArcMap. And I was like, okay, this is not starting off well. And they were like, do you know how to use a computer? And of course I lied, right? Yeah, sure, I'm an expert, no problem. And so I learned to use ArcMap in probably the most painful way possible, which is sitting in an air-conditioned room with a bunch of other soldiers all dressed in uniform and clicking through the buttons while someone is telling you in a PowerPoint like what to click. So that was a really interesting way to learn how to use ArcMap. And when I got done with that experience, we deployed, and I was, called into the big office that you see. You can imagine all these screens up in these places, and it's like, hey, you're going to sit this terminal for a few months, and you're going to help us, and that's that. And I said, okay, this doesn't sound that bad. Air conditioned room, nice meals. Okay, I could do this. This is not bad. So I did that for a few months, and I immediately regretted it because I wanted to get out there with the guys. And so when it came time for me to kind of grow up in my military career a little bit, I said, what are some skill sets that I have learned as an infantryman that are going to help me? And this was one of the few. And so I said, okay, it wasn't bad. When I was looking to get out of the military in 2018, I started looking for schools and thinking about all of the things I had done. And essentially, my idea was, how can I build onto a career of the stuff that I've already accomplished? And it just so happened that I was doing some research, and I found UW is this, top 3 public university, and the geography program is perfect because it has both the art and science that I'm looking for, right? And the ability to use the humanities side, but also the very technical side of ArcMap. So I said, okay, let's give this a try. And I just jumped with both feet, sort of airborne style, out of an airplane, and jumped with both feet into geography. And I was actually surprised because I enjoyed the humanities side far more than I did the very technical side. And so I wasn't prepared for that. That was definitely an interesting experience writing papers. Before this, was talking with Dr. Brown about 315, and I'm sure some of you in here remember 315 well. Lots of writing. I found that great, right? I found it glorious. I'm like, oh, I can express myself in a way, writing these essays, and I just really liked it. So the thing that kept me in geography was the technical side. As you all can tell, I'm pretty okay with speaking in public and being those soft skills. So I really need the hard skills to kind of balance that out. And so I went down a very hard technical path of GIS, and that kind of led me to where I am today. So again, just kind of failed backwards and failed into it. And yeah, I'm here.
Right. Thank you, James. And last but not least, Hamdi.
Yes. So hi, everyone. So for me, geography was, I associated through my childhood. I grew up outside of the United States. My parents worked in the Middle East and came to the US when I was probably in my middle school time frame. So I love geography, and my dad used to have these big encyclopedia of maps, and he loved maps. So I started my knowledge of not only learning some of the countries, the capitals and some regions and whatnot, and kind of took that as a childhood type of love. And then when I came to college, I was a pre-med major because my parents are from medical field and kind of pushed me to the medical side. I eventually realized that was not the path that I wanted to take. So I ended up going to the Department of Geography as an accident. I remember taking a class with Professor Kim England. I don't know if she's there. I think it was Geography Population. And I fell in love with it. And I ended up talking to Professor England, and I'm like, you know what, this is really great. This is where I definitely feel comfortable. And I mean, that should have been my passion. I love geography when I was a little kid. So started taking some of the humanity class, and I remember taking one of your classes, Professor Brown, as far as writing. That
Yeah.
was the tough one, I remember. And and then I ended up going into GIS. And I think at the time, GIS was just about to develop and learning some software on the ArcGIS and kind of developing that skill. Luckily, I think what really motivated me was, keeping that passion alive when I was a little kid and really realizing some of the classes that we were taking and really, really enjoyed it. And I just so happened to be lucky enough to not only be involved in some wonderful organizations that the University of Washington provides and, got an opportunity to be part of active in, some of the organizations that are harnessing some of the STEM side of the house. So I was part of the National Society of Black Engineers. I was part of their chapter. I was a officer at their chapter, at the local chapter, and we got lucky to travel to different regions to meet other students and things like that. I just so happened to be interviewed with Boeing Company on the other side of the country, not being interviewed here in Seattle, and getting two offers. So I was like, well, this is great. So that helped me a little bit. And I think not only that, but that propelled me to really not only understand the airline industry and how geography is really, really well connected on that side, because at Boeing, when it comes to how we divide up the countries and the regions, we actually do look in regions and focus on what airlines and what specific aircrafts are utilized to travel from Singapore to London or whatnot. So that really helped me kind of not only understand and use my geography knowledge to really understand how some of the routes and networks and worked, and how some of the engineers really not only develop aircraft but also work with agencies and kind of build the network that we currently have today with all the different airlines that are competing in the world.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks. Okay, second question. Recognizing that you are more than only geographers, I still want to ask, how does your training as geographers shape your commitments and your activities today? By that, I mean either what you do or maybe how you do it. And let's start with James.
Perfect. Yeah. So I think the thing I've learned most from geography is to looking at problems at scale. That has been like the best analytical tool that I've been able to use. And I think also understanding, different cultures and regions and some of the ways of interpersonal relationships that can work geography has really helped me with that. And then lastly, sort of understanding that the way the world works is different for everyone, right? And the way that they see the world is very different for everyone. And so really level setting with people, understanding, I'm going to use some project management terms now, but stakeholder buy-in and all that kind of stuff. It's really, really, it really has changed the way I view things. It also helps that I work with a bunch of accountants, so they view the world very differently, right? And so it's always good to sort of be that balancing act in the room when we make decisions. So yeah.
A great answer. Great answer. Hamdi?
Yep. I actually agree 100% what you just said, James, because I'm a project manager by training, and you definitely have to not only appease to people, but you have to balance everybody's opinions and inputs and whatnot. So for me, a lot of what I've taken from geography is when I was actually training some of the airlines, kind of understanding what region they're coming from, understanding not only their time zone, what works perfectly for them. We had to really work on accommodating not only with language, but with meetings and certain things that we need to really handhold them to make their experience a little bit much better. I've learned that not, as far as customer service, on how to really connect those pieces together. I just happen to not only utilize a different language that I haven't spoken for like 15 years. I had to help a colleague of mine, translate from one of the Moroccan airlines, and he wrote in French and in Arabic. And I had, I was like, well, I speak a little bit of French, but can write you the Arabic sign or whatnot. But so that helps a little bit better. I think understanding and giving you that mind of frame, geography does provide you that pathway to understand and be open to really, embracing different cultures and different aspects and how people think around the world and really utilize that. So I was very, very fortunate, luckily, to not only work with two airlines in Europe, one airline in Canada, and an airline in Morocco, and gives you a different perspective on how things are working. So obviously our neighbors in Canada, kind of have similar culture here in the US, whereas European folks are a little bit later in the day and you have to work with them on their calendar. Folks in Africa, totally different time zone. You would have to work during our nighttime, during their morning time. So you become a little bit more resilient to really open your mind and a little bit learn about their culture and their background and what they need and things like that. So that was really a good thing for me to really embrace that as a geographer, to really learn from my.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Hamdi. And Ashley, same question.
Sure. Yeah. So I think that in the nonprofit space that I've been in, the weirdest and highest demand for my skills as a geographer has been like, make a map. And I did not specialize in GIS. Like, I took a few GIS classes here and there, and I can kind of like fiddle around with it. But there's a huge demand in the nonprofit space for even like kind of rudimentary data visualization skills, because it's so important for kind of making our case. And a lot of times in nonprofit work, we're kind of going up against like organizations and institutions that have way bigger budgets than we do and can like put out huge amounts of materials. And so it's kind of one way that we can try to like make our own case for what we're asking for. I think the like other skills that I use regularly and that I think are in demand in my field are kind of just around like critical thinking skills, data literacy, map literacy, being able to kind of look at something and question like, I don't know where that came from. Let me like do a little bit of digging, or being able to kind of compare across different countries, like, well, what happened in this place or what happened in this time period that could be applicable to how we organize now, or how we build, just food systems now, for example, like that we're working on. So I think that those are some of the kind of more like in the social science side or the humanities side of geography, those are some of the skills that I use every day and that, continue to kind of build on in my work.
Great. Yes. Great. Okay, so I am going to turn now to the final question for our discussants, and then we'll turn to the audience Q&A. So my final question to our three wonderful panelists are, what impacts are you most passionate about making in the world? What impacts are you most passionate about making in the world? And let's start this time with Hamdi.
Geez, that's a very broader question. So for me, I have a daughter, and teaching her geography, I learned that it could be a little bit hard because public education system is not providing them that platform, I feel like. But one of the things is really sharing the knowledge and expanding your worldly view through a child's lens. So I've given her the opportunity to, not only, try to teach her a little bit of history, but also having her look at maps and things like that. One thing I'll tell you, as a third grader, she knows all her 50 states capitals, so that's a good thing. And I'm like, at least we started in a good path. But for me, as a geographer, I definitely want to see, learning more and appreciating others' cultures. I think in the world that we're in today, there's so many things going on, and we're sharing everything through social media. I think having that knowledge, I feel like social media gives us that lens to look into other cultures and opportunities to see how we can learn from each other. Really making the effort to not only expand that, but also embrace history and kind of put the two together and humanize our connection throughout the globe. Also, obviously, I think it's a good way to put geography and history together in a way to sense that for people to understand and how we appreciate not only the land that that we live in, or the food that we're consuming, or the information that we're grasping, and really, really making sure that putting those two pieces together, and hopefully teaching the younger generations on how to appreciate that, and providing them the tools that they need to really better on that. I agree. I haven't used a little bit on my mapping skills. I would love to see, ArcGIS go with that. I actually do have two siblings who actually followed my path after I graduated from University of Washington, and they're actually, geography majors, and they utilize ArcGIS and work with the cities and things like that. So there's a huge opportunities, I feel like, for the next generation to really utilize that. My goal is in the future is to really, focus on that and continue on teaching. And, I'm starting on with my daughter, and hopefully however I can help, expand the knowledge of anybody that would need, and share those information, and share my views on how to expand that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you. And Ashley?
So I think that the impact that I would like to have on the world that I'm working on is that I would just like to leave the world in a better place than I came into it. And in part, that's, coming from my trajectory as a geographer, and it's also coming from my position as a parent to two kids. So I have a very personal stake in, trying to build regenerative systems and composting, so kind of on an environmental level, figuring out systems that work, and then also building, systems and societies that are racially just, that are, working against militarism and violence, working against colonialism, continued settler colonial relations here and abroad. And so those are kind of that's my kind of driving force, is just how can we leave this planet better off than when we came into it.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, we have a bit of time for a fourth question.
Can I answer?
Yes, please. Oh,
Okay.
sorry. I'm sorry, James. Go ahead.
You're good. I've been I just want to make sure that I get my piece out there.
Yes.
So for me, it's interesting because diplomacy is often considered the first option, the first best option. The second option is I believe the CIA doing something, and the third option is war, right? And we want to kind of stay away from the bottom two, right? So we want to kind of stay with diplomacy as much as we can. So the tagline at the Department of State is, something like creating, fostering a better world for American citizens, and promoting America's values across the world. And you hear a lot of that stuff, and you're not going to hear that from me, though. What I'm going to talk about is how basically a sort of an atonement, right? So I was in the Army, deployed, all that kind of stuff. And now I look back on that, and I don't have some, rah-rah sense and sensibility about it. In fact, I feel a deep gratitude to the country for allowing me to do that, but also to the people that we are inflicting damage on, right? And there has to be a better way than what we're doing. I think since 2020, we've had a withdrawal from Afghanistan, which was a State Department mission. We've had the obvious breakdown in diplomatic relationships between the U.S. and Russia, and then obviously what's going on in Israel now, and the horrible atrocities being committed there. So, for me, my driving force is to sort of take what I have learned and take what I have done and use that as a force for good at my level that I can do it. And so that's why I'm really interested in what I'm doing, which is more on along the diplomatic security systems line. And if I'll take you on a little tour before 9/11, pre 9/11, all of these agencies were very stovepiped. The CIA would run missions and they wouldn't tell the FBI, and the FBI would run missions and they wouldn't tell anybody else, and so forth and so on all the way along. Well, now someone finally has said, hey, there's a better way to do this. All sources analysis is happening. And all sorts of analysis comes from geointelligence, which we all know, hey, look, a map, right? Signals intelligence. So the Russian person who is now listening onto this call because I mentioned Russia, right? Open source intelligence. So that's everything that we post on Facebook and IG and so forth. Measurement and signatures intelligence, which is mass intelligence, which is actually really interesting. It's how they determined Osama bin Laden was on the 3rd floor balcony because they were able to figure out who is the 6'6" man standing up there, and they were able to measure his height against, shadows and so forth. And then human intelligence, which is the CIA spies, gathering intelligence from them. So you'd think that all of that intelligence would come together and would be sort of collected and analyzed. But the first thing they have to do is georeference it. So they take all of that intelligence and they georeference it and they make a map and they sort of figure out in time and space what is going on in a certain threat environment. And unbelievably, that is a new idea here in our modern world. And so that's the department that I'm going into. That's the program that I'm going to be managing. And so my hope is that I can use the skills that I have to make the world a slightly better place and avoid the wars that I've talked about before.
Thank you very much. So yes, we still have time for a 4th question, but it's a quick one. Hopefully this won't be too challenging. But what's the one thing you wish you had known when you were finding your path in the first years after graduation? And let's start with Hamdi.
So this is right after college, right?
Yep.
Okay. So I graduated in 2008, so right in the economic collapse that was happening. I think a lot of us that were graduating, and I know Ashley, you were same year as me, kind of worried not having a job. That was, the panic. I remember starting my career early on as an analyst, as a business analyst, and doing some analysis for the marketing team. And I think at the same time, the Boeing company was also going through a little bit of hardship with a lot of the airlines canceling their orders, and 787 was coming in the pipeline. So a lot of factors happening at the same time. So obviously, I think as a college graduate, you have all these fears and these unknowns that you don't know where to go on. But for me, one of the things I try to do is that utilize that to not only expand my network, try to really focus on not only learning some of because I didn't do engineering background. I didn't come from an engineering side of the house. So I had to kind of focus a little bit on learning the aeronautics side of the house, getting familiarized to understanding the background, the history of Boeing, and really learning the different, fleets of aircraft options that we provide. I was very lucky. I was working with the marketing and sales departments. They kind of gave me an insight on how they go about these air shows, right? There's biannual air shows that they go on to, either Paris or Farnborough, which is in London. And then we have the Dubai Air Show that's actually currently happening right now. So these are the big, hurrahs, conferences where you have all these big, not only airlines, commercial airlines, whether that come in, participate, but you also have competitors. You have Airbus, you have Northrop Grumman, you have Raytheons, you have all these big military aircrafts that also participate. So learning and understanding how all these entities come together and how they utilize some of the training materials and what skill sets that you need to have kind of made me focus a little bit on understanding and really putting my head down and learning the business and working closely with the teams. I think my first 2 years was really, really spending heavily on understanding the business and working closely with some of the sales teams and some of the engineering side of the house. Eventually, I kind of moved over to managing some of the, mobile space. So mobile came about around 2009, 2010. iPads was the popular thing. So all these sales directors carrying iPads with them everywhere they go. So we had to figure out a way to not only take all these pamphlets and put them on an iPad. So I was part of the team that I managed with some of the developers to really work on taking some of the marketing information as well as some of the engineering, wireframes and whatnot, and, put it in a fancy, marketing content and making it available at their shows. So that was one of the things that I kind of highlighted my year, kind of going from graduating to towards the end of 2009, 2010, and really seeing something that flourishes out, and saw how one of that project went to flourishing and during the Dare show. So that was a cool thing to see.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. James, what's one thing you wish you had known when you were finding your path the first year after graduating?
Well, I graduated into the pandemic, so that was a curveball.
Yeah.
Was not prepared for that. I think, gosh, the one thing that I wish I would have known is that hard work is often rewarded, but maybe not in the timeline that you think it will be. And I think that goes back to my earlier answer about, having some perspective and seeing the scale in things. At that time, it was, everything was muddy, right? Nobody knew anything. We were all working remotely or living remotely. My son was born in March of 2020, so that's my little pandemic prize. So it was a weird time, definitely. But I think I really lucked out in many ways just because of the hard work that I think I had put in, because it allowed me to be really flexible. And so because I had a strong foundation, I was able to go, okay, this isn't going the way I wanted it to. I'm not walking into an internship because no one's hiring, right? Okay, I have no marketable skills right now other than a bachelor's degree. What do I do? Are there any master's programs available, and will they take me? And it just so happened that University of Washington happened to have one, and I was able to build out this program where I could do a master's program and GIS at the same time, but not a master's in geography, right? I was in a master's in project management, sort of. So yeah, in many ways it worked out for me because I didn't have to go to class. I could be like, for all the Harry Potter fans in the audience, I could be like Hermione, and it could be in two places at once, right? So I could be on a Zoom call for both of my things, both of my education. So yeah, I just think, again, hard work. It's such a cliche thing to say, and I know I sound like the oldest boomer ever, and I apologize. Yeah, the hard work thing really does it does pay off in the end. It's just keeping the faith throughout. Yeah.
Thank you. Ashley, how about you?
Yeah, just to echo a lot of this, I graduated in 2008 in the middle of a recession, and I think for all the Star Trek fans, if there are any Star Trek fans, I feel like there's sometimes like a geography Star Trek relationship, but there's a quote by Jean-Luc Picard where he says, it's possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness, that is life. And I think about that a lot, just, as James was saying, like, I put a lot of stock in, like, I get good grades and put in a lot, do the work. And even into, like, when I went to graduate school, I had that kind of like, I'm just, just like, be smart and do the work and do things on time and, do well, and that will guarantee success. And I wish that I had more of a embrace of like my own worth and value apart from that kind of like very capitalistic, like, you have to succeed in this very like rigid way. And I wish that I had invested a lot more in relationship building and networking. And I say that as like an introvert. I hate networking, but I think it's just so important to have relationships and people who like know you and can vouch for you and can, basically kind of, let you know when there's jobs or, oh, you would be a great fit for this position. There's so much of that happens even off of there's, jobs that aren't even posted on job boards. They're just kind of like, this kind of shadow hiring process through networks and friends and colleagues. So that's the one thing that I kind of like wish that I had known and that I had invested more heavily in, both like building relationships with professors and then building relationships in a lot of other realms and maintaining those.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all. And so now we're going to move on to take audience questions, a mix of questions that have come in via chat and questions you may want to post directly to our guests now. And so I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague, Dr. Gretchen Snegas, who's going to run that part of our program tonight.
Hi, thank you all so much. And thanks to those of you who have already put some questions in the Q&A. You are still welcome to do that. It is one of the options down towards the bottom of the Zoom screen. So you can just click on that and put a question, and I'll start selecting a few. So first we have one from someone named Smith409 Watch Party. When did you start identifying as a geographer, if you do? And what does it mean to be a geographer in the world today? So we'll start with Hamdi and then go to James and Ashley.
So I started identifying as a geographer my junior year in college. That's when I changed my major. I was a pre-med major. I was actually a biology major, and I switched over. I think from there on, I became a geographer, kind of immersed into the department, focused on my classes, learned a little bit and, really trying to understand on where do I want it to go. I focused on GIS in my geography degree. Then after graduating, going into the aerospace, really, I think that propelled me. And I didn't really feel as a geographer when I went to there because I was mostly an analyst and trying to understand, Boeing lingo and being an engineer and all that stuff. But one of the things that I had to wear that hat again was towards halfway through middle of my career. When I was supporting and working closely with airlines. I think that in itself was a learning curve. I remember going to that group, joining that group, and really training airlines one-on-one. That forced me to really focus on, hey, what region are they hailing from? What country, what area, what they need, things like that. I think that really helped me a little bit to kind of bring out my geography hat and put it on again, and to not only utilize the language skills that I had, depending on what region they're at from, utilize some of the informations and work with my colleagues to kind of build a better training program for them to assist them on that end. I think from there on, really, I've embraced on really harnessing that knowledge. And, I've moved forward to last year to working with food services. Food services is a little bit different. I worked supporting some of the sales organizations for North America Food Services for General Mills. This is the company that sells all the different Cheerios, cereals that we eat. Understanding how, food companies and how food source comes in and really, becomes distributed across not only US, but Canada as well. Learning that, I think, also kind of propelled me to keep on my geography hat and be able to embrace that and ask the tough questions and really see where is it that I can make an influence and learn about that. Obviously, they're focusing more on sales and volume and financial stuff, but learning the different products, expanding on the history, and learning how each region in the Midwest region is a little bit different than the West Coast region or the East Coast region, and how food distributing kind of works together overall. That was in itself also another learning curve to understand as a geographer and kind of pinpoint and put all that perspective together. So you're constantly a geographer. I feel like doesn't matter what career path you go through. At this day and age, I feel like with social media and network that we have grown so far, you're always going to have somewhat of a geography impact as you go through your career.
I feel like part of the challenge and joy of teaching geography is you're just showing people that they're geographers. They just didn't know it yet.
Exactly. Pretty
James.
much.
Yeah. James, how about you?
For me, I think I think the moment it clicked for me was actually not in a geography class. I took Dr. Moskel's remote sensing course. I don't know if the environmental science program, they still offer that. And I remember, it's a lot of labs, and it was a lot more labs than I had been used to in the GIS world. And I was just like, I mean, I don't have much hair, but I was pulling all the hair I had out, trying to like figure out how to do these labs. And I remember I was wearing a bathrobe while working on whatever this lab was, and I started instantly thinking about that Vermeer's The Geographer, and how the person in there is wearing that robe and they're staring out, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've become this person. I am now this, whatever I think I don't remember what Renaissance painter decides this is what a geographer looks like. I said, I feel that. I suddenly have felt what this painting is about, and that's when it really kind of clicked for me. And then that was the moment. It took a little bit of introspection really to get there, but once I realized, oh my gosh, I'm doing this, I've got my wings, I know how to fly, like this is great. Yeah, and so that was the moment for me for sure.
And Ashley, how about you?
Yeah, I think my like identity as a geographer came into focus when I was taking an econ class. And I remember I was taking at the same time I was taking the Geographies of Global Inequality class, and I literally I was in the econ class, and they were like, and then there's comparative advantage, and just like some countries are better at producing like certain things. And then I went to the geography class, and they're like, yeah, and those comparative advantages were created through colonization and like the deindustrialization of India, for example, that basically took it from being one of the top textile producers in the world to just producing raw cotton for Britain. And I was like, okay, yep, yes. It was just, there was something that was missing from the framework that we were learning in econ, where they were just kind of like, don't ask questions, just here's how it is, here's how the world is, here's how it works, here's a model, and so that was just kind of like what pushed me into geography. And I declared my major in geography like within the first quarter of being at UW, in part because I transferred in, and they were like, you need to declare right now, and I was like, geography. So, and I've identified strongly as a geographer ever since, in both in like academic geography and just now like in my other career and just in my life. Like, I think, as others have said, there's just certain kinds of ways of thinking, certain kinds of appreciations and connections that we draw as geographers that kind of persist regardless of what you're doing.
Thank you all so much. Here's a question that I think follows kind of nicely on the heels of that one, from Hanwei Liu. When becoming a geographer, did you have any ideas of going down a different career path? And let's start with James with this one.
Sort of. I knew that I wanted to work for the government because I'd already invested all that time. So I knew I wanted to do it in some way, but I really wanted to work. I think it's NOAA, NOAA. Yep. And then NASA was the other one. I wanted to work in their Earth Space Sciences. I even went so far as like doing an internship and all that. And I was like, this is terrible. Like the GIS, I'm so bad at this. Why am I trying to do this? I'm forcing a square peg in a round hole like over and over again, So I think for me, I kind of knew what I wanted to do. Maybe NGA was an option. I know a lot of geographers end up doing that. For me, I just wanted to be more on the operations side and less on like one specific intelligence stovepipe. So I don't know if that's a great answer, but that's the answer I have. So there you go.
Thank you, James. Ashley, how about you?
I guess so different than what, I guess, because I was, when I did my undergrad, I was like fully set on doing graduate school. I wanted to go get a PhD. I kind of knew that. I took 2 years off, worked, did various things in that time period, worked like volunteered with a nonprofit. And then I went to graduate school, like fully set on kind of the academic path. Like I, gonna get my degree and be a professor. And the academic job market is not great. It's really tough out there. And I was teaching geography in New York State for 4 years, and in the middle of that, the pandemic started, and I had my child like not long after yours, James. Mine was in May of that year, my first one, and it just was kind of this like very isolating experience, and I was like, I don't feel like this is where I'm making the kind of impact that I would like to be making. And so I switched over pretty intentionally to doing nonprofit consulting. And then now in my position as a researcher that's doing a lot kind of more applied research. We're working a lot on like the US Farm Bill right now and like direct policy implications. So I think like, I think one of the things from my experience is just like, there are a lot of shifts, I think, that have happened for me, both like in terms of what's out there in the world and in terms of like what my own goals are and where I can see myself fitting in and using my skills best. So it's a long process, I think, for a lot of people, and there's a lot of career shifts and things like that. And I think that's another thing that I think I wish I'd known earlier, right? Is just that that's okay, and that happens to a lot of people, and it's like all part of your process.
Thank you. And Hamdi.
Mhm. So for me, I actually wanted to also go into graduate school had I not gone through Boeing and gotten a job. My thing was right after graduating, I wanted to do a little bit of political science and maybe kind of expand on international studies. It was more in my interest, and I'd taken some classes during undergrad. My goal was to work for the UN, to be frank with you. Maybe work on some other, NGO programs and things like that. Maybe travel back to Africa. That's something that my childhood haven't had an experience to do that. And being able to speak multiple languages, I definitely wanted to utilize that. Unfortunately, I took a different path, right? I went to corporate America, and that was it. But my sense was once I declared my major, and I've taken classes, I definitely wanted to really go into the not only embrace myself in geography, but also do some of the international studies and really kind of focus on learning policies and whatnot. And that was the path that that would have been really marketable for me, I think, had I taken that in that path forward. Yep.
Thank you, Hamdi.
Mhm.
I think we have time for one more question, and this last question comes to us from anonymous participant, and they ask, what skills do you find yourself using often and maybe did not get enough touch points during your educational journey? And we'll start with Ashley on this one.
The things that I use a lot that I didn't get touch points on, I think the main one that comes to mind, especially if I think back to coming out of undergrad, is project management. I think that there's this kind of implicit exposure that people have to project management. Like you're doing a literature review, you're writing a paper, maybe you work with a student group or something like that. So there's these kind of ways that you're being exposed to it, but it wasn't directly like applicable or kind of pulled out as such, like that this is what you're doing project management. And that's one that, I'm constantly managing projects. It's not my favorite part of my job, to be honest. I love like doing more of the research stuff and less of the like nagging people to complete things. and timelining and work planning and all of that, but it's part of what I do. And that's, something that I think, we're all doing in various ways. And I think that maybe being a little bit more like explicit about that is what you're doing, that is a skill that you're coming out of your undergrad with, could be helpful, or could have been helpful.
Yeah, I hear you on project management very much. Hamdi, how about you?
I agree 100% because that's something I feel like in academia world, you were never taught to not only delegate work, communicate effectively, get status, right? I think that's the first thing you learn. I feel like in corporate America, it's so heavily used, and that's something that you're kind of automatically expected to, show those skills. And for me, it took me a while, I think, right after graduating college and shifting my mind from academia to corporate world, and that's how people function. And that was one of the things I was like, you know what, I'm going to learn this and I'm going to make it as a career, and get my hands dirty and just understand. I think the other thing is communication. I think is a big key, is that in academia, we're kind of, really thought to really put our thoughts in paper, right? Think theoretically and really get the research and make sure that you're effectively communicating your thoughts. Whereas in corporate world, you're expected to, carry the conversation, really break down the problem, the root cause of the problem, and how to solve that, and bring up ideas to discussion as part of, managing that project. And networking, I feel like that's the other key, is that nobody really teaches you how to network, right? I think that's something that you kind of have to accidentally really push yourself to really be able to, get out of your shell a little bit more and communicate with people. And as myself as an introvert as well too, it took me a while, but organizations, professional organizations, being in some of these different teams, to go in happy hours, or really not even also taking one-on-ones with management. I think, that in itself, it's a little bit hard when you're trying to approach somebody that you don't know, but you really admire them. And you're like, hey, I would like to have a 30-minute conversation with you. It's a very, very struggle. So I feel like those are the three things I feel like as an undergrad, really expose yourself to those. There's a lot of help books about that. There's a lot of organizations, student organization groups, professional organization groups that will definitely really help you propel that, because I feel like some of these interviews and what recruiters are looking for is, can you effectively communicate? Can you manage a project? How well versatile you are, and how can you market yourself? I think those are the big things that a lot of these whatever career that you're looking into, especially in corporate America, and you're trying to expand that, obviously those are critical items to hit for sure.
Thank you so much, Hamdi. And James, bring it home.
Yeah, for me, it's very similar to what has been said already. The one piece I'll add is the teamwork piece. I think that's, especially as undergrad, you get it a lot more at the graduate level, working in teams to sort of big projects. But I think, especially as someone who currently is recruiting undergrads, it's one of those for my venture capital firm. It's very interesting to see sort of the folks who are comfortable in working in small teams. Those folks usually have better outcomes, irregardless of what degree they came from. We recruit a lot from Foster, and one of the reasons why is because they do a lot of small group projects that really align to kind of how we work, right? We work in very small teams. I do remember a few times doing some group projects, but obviously to undergrad level, it's really hard to do that because you just have to assign each individual person a grade, right? And then I know your emails are going to be full of people saying, well, I should have gotten an 89 on this instead of an 88. And now, Canvas is telling me I'm going to, my GPA is dropping by 0.01. This has massive ramifications on my life, and an asteroid's going to hit my house, and people start catastrophizing about the small things, right? And so I understand why it's not done, but I think that would be a great thing. And another thing that I always like to bring up is that the structure, and this is not a criticism, but the structure of just general education is that you have to have a foreign language. Foreign language is incredibly important, and I'm not saying that it's not, but I think instead of making it a requirement for graduation, they should make it an option. Either take a foreign language or a facilitation course that's offered by like one of the other social sciences or speech. I think it's speech and therapy building. They have this how to be a peer group facilitator, which is fantastic. It basically teaches you conflict resolution, which is something that you will need as you grow in your career, no matter what you do. So even if you're just working the fries at McDonald's, you need to have conflict resolution. It's just something that's out there, right? Because you're working with other people. So again, that's not a criticism of geography itself, but just the way the university operates. I wish there was more people being pushed into this one-on-one sort of those sort of communication styles. I think that would be great. Yeah.
Thanks so much, James, and all of you. And I don't know what you're talking about though, because my students love group work. Yeah, famously popular among students to have group grades. Well, that wraps it up for this section, and I am now going to be moving us along to the invite everyone to stay for the breakout rooms for the reception part of this event. So there are going to be 2 rounds of this, 12 minutes each as time allows, and our esteemed colleague Nell Gross is going to be managing those, and she will be sharing a screen with some prompts for the small group discussion. And she just shared those here in the chat. You might want to copy them because I think sometimes the chat doesn't copy over to the small group. So you may want to, capture those in some way. You will be given a 2-minute warning at the 10-minute mark to let you know that that section will be wrapping up. And then at the end of those 2 sections, we'll be coming back to wrap up tonight's event.
Great. Let me just jump in, and please join me in thanking our panelists for a really, really rich and wonderful discussion. Thank you all so very, very much. Really appreciate it. Yes.